Hello and welcome to Womb Magic. This is a show and a movement dedicated to cultivating and unleashing the wild woman within. Hello, Mandee. How are you today?
Hi, Heidi. I'm good. I just got back from a nice walk and I feel all refreshed and invigorated. I live in South Florida and it was really hot this morning, so I feel like I got a total detox in because I was sweating quite a bit.
That's amazing.
How are you
It's
doing?
I am doing well. I spent some time in meditation this morning and had a little dance party with myself. Sometimes I like to do that in the mornings. And I was just thinking about how important it is to align your energy before you move about your day, whatever that looks like for you. And for me, I'm actually someone that tends to, if I have too much energy built up, it can kind of transition into anxiety. And so I did some of my movement practices that really help with that. And if there's any other women out there who, or anyone really who struggles with that, dance for 3 minutes to your favorite song and make sure for like at least 20 seconds your arms are like above your head if you can, and that lowers your stress response in the body and also just helps you like stay present and get you connected in. So just a little thing I did that really helped me and thought of today. So yeah, excited.
I love that.
Yeah.
I use that all the time for myself, and I recommend it to my clients all the time. I'm like, listen, there's one way to change your energy. Play yourself a song and just dance. And it doesn't have to be anything too crazy. As long as you're getting your movement flowing, then you'll get energy flowing. But I really haven't thought about consciously making sure I lift my arms up over my head. So I'm going to make sure I incorporate that.
It's just a really fun way to like quickly drop your stress response and help your body understand that, you know, nothing crazy is happening to you. You can just be present and move forward. It's awesome.
Wonderful. Yep, I'm a fan.
Beautiful. So what would you like to talk about first, Mandee?
Well, it's interesting. I'm in my moon cycle right now. I'm pre-menstruating, and I don't know if I've mentioned it on this show or not, but I love this little app called the Hormone Horoscope, and it kind of tells you where you are. You do it by like the day of your period. So right now I'm on, let's see, I'm going to open it up. I'm on day 24 of my cycle. And so it gives you like it gives you information as to how you're going to be feeling. So right now it says you may need to remind yourself to show more emotions today, especially when a friend surprises you with a gift or a boss gives you a raise. That is, if you ever want to get one again. Rising progesterone is mellowing you out today and making you quiet, so you're more likely to keep your emotions on the inside, which can confuse folks who expect a splashy show of gratitude on the outside from you. Because your pep is so limited today, try to pinpoint the most energetic part of your day. For instance, if you're a morning person, an afternoon person, or an evening person, and then get all of your most important projects done during those hours. When it comes to socializing, you're apt to prefer quality one-on-one time with the best bud over a loud crowd or a crowded I stumbled upon that. Over attending loud, crowded parties. Some bad news for your significant others, though. You have less interest in kissing and cuddling and more interest in snuggling up on the couch with a plate of cupcakes or a bowl of chips. You could try explaining it's because of your progesterone, a hormone that puts a damper on romantic urges while reviving food cravings. But progesterone-filled verbal flubs and a mouthful of cupcake, you may not get your messages across too clearly today. So I enjoy that. And then it goes in just to let you know that it's the progesterone that's triggering some water retention. So if I feel a little bloated or a little heavier today, then that's why. And then it encourages you to eat foods like asparagus, cucumber, ginger, parsley, watercress, watermelon, things that kind of help you to not feel as heavy and as bloated.
That's awesome. I love that. I also utilize the hormone horoscope thanks to Mandee. And I'm on day 21, so it's so funny because I'm like right there with you.
Yeah, we've sunk up, and it's funny because on Tuesday I was just feeling really like, oh my God, I'm like, what am I doing with my life? I'm so like, I feel so blah and depressed, and like I just didn't have any get up and go, and I'm like questioning my like work and all kinds of stuff. And then I pulled out my hormone horoscope, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm totally sane. This is just my hormones talking, and I just need to take some time and to rest. And it's funny, even this morning or last night I was watching a show that would usually like make me cry or pull out emotion, and it didn't. And I was like, oh my God, am I getting numb? Like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not like reacting to this at all? And so just now reading that, I'm like, oh, it's because of where my progesterone's at, and it makes me really mellow and like makes it look like I don't have a lot of emotions.
That's amazing. Yeah, I have those moments, and I call them like dead inside moments. And I'm like, am I dead inside right now? Or, oh, wait, never mind. It's just my hormones.
Just the hormones coming through, which is funny because, you know, when you're PMSing, right before you kind of start to sink into that kind of lull, dead inside feeling, a lot of times we get kind of like salty or bitchy or irritable or crazy kind of, or if people tend to get a little jealous or vindictive, the third week of their period is a good time for that to happen.
I like to call it passionate.
I like
I
that.
get very passionate about things.
Yeah, very passionate. So yeah, so that's where I'm at today, and I'm excited to get to my bleed for sure. There's a lot going on cosmically right now too. We're in this really weird trine that's making things really hard to communicate in relationships. A lot of people with this new moon coming up on the 3rd, which is just in a few days actually, on June 3rd, a lot of people are kind of questioning if they want to stay in relationships, if they want to leave relationships, if they're single, what they're wanting to do with their life's path and finding joy. It's kind of a big transformational new moon coming up, followed by this kind of crazy cosmic energy. So I don't know if you're feeling any of that or if you've noticed that with your clients, but I sure have. In this past week, all of my readings that have come to me and all my clients, it's all been very much relationship-based issues and lots of deciding whether to stay or leave.
I've actually seen a lot of that in people I know over the last couple months for sure. Like engagements being broken off and people that have been together forever, just like, quote unquote, all of the sudden being done. And I find it really interesting. I would say that in my own relationship, I haven't experienced anything like that, but I will say where it's usually really easy for my partner to communicate things to me. I noticed yesterday he was like, by the way, I'm still feeling stressed about this or something like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And usually I can intuitively pick up like whatever's going on for him. And it wasn't about the relationship per se, but it was just like communication was a little bit more taxed than normal. So I find that really interesting. And then also, I was just kind of thinking about how relationships, like, womb magic as a path to, I think we talked about this a little bit, womb magic as a path toward relational peace. And getting really in tune with your body and the biofeedback your body gives you about what what the truth of your relationship is and what's really present for you there. So I think it's very timely and perfect to talk about relationships and very related to living in alignment with our cycle, because if we're living in alignment with our cycle, we're not ignoring any of the messages we're getting cosmically, either from our own body or from the universe, intuitively. And so I think that this is a beautiful time to kind of dive in and talk about relationships and quality of relationships and what that looks like, perhaps. And also, I was thinking this morning, tangent, full circle, Heidi.
You go, girl.
So I was thinking this morning, my partner and I are reading The Art of Happiness together by, I forget his name, but I think I'm going to get it wrong. I think he's a psychologist, maybe a philosopher, but he interviewed the Dalai Lama and asked specific questions about relationships and how people find a path to peace and happiness and whatnot. And I haven't gotten too far in with it, but I was thinking about how in Buddhism, a lot of people talk about how suffering is the path. Everyone experiences suffering, and that's a unifying thing, which is true in a lot of ways because we incarnated here to learn, and without difficult trials, we're not going to learn as much as we would like to learn. So we came here to experience depth. So I prefer depth over suffering per se, because I think you can experience hard things without suffering. But I also was thinking about what if we flipped our perspective and bringing womb magic back in, talking about pleasure. What if our common experience is pleasure? And what if that is our driving force? Because we're all born from an orgasm. Everyone desires to, human consciousness and brain patterning, we're biologically hardwired to want to put ourselves in positions to experience joy and to feel good. And so if we're actually hardwired for pleasure, then would our common experience be to experience pleasure and to share in that pleasure? So I think that's a really interesting aspect of relationships, because and just stop me and interject wherever, because I just I'm
you
looking
go,
at
girl.
it.
I'm loving all of this.
I'm looking at it kind of a wheel on a cart. I don't know why, an 1800s wagon or something pulled by a horse and buggy type scenario, and you have this big wheel type thing, and there's all these different facets that support beams that support the relationship. And so many people expect relationships to be hard. They're oh, without heartache, the relationship isn't meaningful. And it was really funny. I was listening to, I'm going to out myself right now. I was cleaning the other day and Taylor Swift came on, and it was a weird Taylor Swift album with a commentary.
Oh, interesting.
From her early days, not quite country, but not quite pop.
I was all about T Swift back then. So I feel ya. What song?
It was Fearless or something.
Oh, awesome.
And, but she gave a commentary about some song, and I don't think it was Fearless, but it was that album. And she said that the part of the fun of a relationship is the struggle, and if it's not hard, then it's not worth it. And I was I completely disagree, because when you've experienced a traumatic relationship with only struggle, and I mean, not that there wasn't anything good, because if there's nothing good, then typically humans aren't going to stay in a place that is only bad for them, essentially. There has to be some reason we want to stay, whether it be we're addicted to the abuse, or something gets us that feeling of high. But anyways, I thought that was really interesting that so many people have that belief of they make excuses for bad behavior and partnerships, because they're oh, either no one is perfect, or no one is gonna do this for me, provide for me in this way, whether it be an emotion or a feeling, or whatever it is that you're needing from your partner that you're not getting. We're so quick to be oh, well, this is just how it is, rather than expecting something better. And I think that for me, I definitely experienced a relationship for 3 years like that, where I kept making excuses because I saw potential, I saw what could be, and I also like was buying into the belief that like, oh, well, nothing worth having is ever easy, because that was my experience. But when I got sick and tired of that being my experience, I was like, well, what if I let myself play, emotionally and mentally for a minute? And what if I thought that it perhaps could be easy? What if like pleasure, so to speak, could drive my experience? Well, then I could have whatever I chose to have in my relationship. And that relationship fell away, and my partner now ended up coming in like shortly thereafter with much more grace and ease. And there's been like maybe 2 or 3 times where we've had discussions about like things we were working through, but it's never been hard. And that's not to say that it couldn't ever be hard, but I think that easy relationships is the path to alignment with your body, with your mind, with your spirit, with your womb space. And if you're allowing pleasure rather than suffering to lead the way, then you're much more likely to experience more consistent ease and pleasure over time. And I'm sorry I talked for forever.
Don't be. I think that's absolutely brilliant and something that needs to be discussed and heard. And, I spend a lot of time thinking about this in my own healing journey, in my own relationship history and whatnot. And I think a lot of it comes down to, how we were conditioned through our religions, whether it was Buddhism or Christianity or whatever it was, and simply in society. And if you think about it, the classic thing that people identify with romance is the hand slapping across the face in Casablanca, and how romantic that is and whatnot. And it's like this kind of notion that there has to be struggle and there has to be work in order to have a healthy and balanced relationship. And I really have been trying my best this past year to start focusing on choosing pleasure as opposed to struggle. And I'm like, I'm done working really hard at things. And if something's no longer serving me, then I'm just going to have to allow it to fall away. And in past relationships, I definitely would have tried way harder to fix things or make it better or offer help or whatnot. But I've really come to realize at this point in my relationships now, it's about accepting where people are at currently and then living out of unattachment. I could attach to the idea that, this person might be everything I need in several years, but we don't know that that'll happen. And all I can go on is what's being presented at the moment. And I see this a lot just even with friendships and family members. People have a hard time taking a step back from, family members who create toxicity in their life because, they're loyal to them and they're their family and they love them so much and they want them to get better. But I've really come to realize, and I've heard this several times, we interviewed Cheryl Muir, who's an amazing kind of relationship expert and coach and twin flame kind of guru. And she talked about how you can't really make any decisions in relationships until you're able to take some space and see what happens. Because if you're constantly entwined in one another's energy, particularly if you're empathic, then you're not going to have a very clear view of what things are supposed to be looking like for you. And I found that very potent and very powerful. And I've noticed throughout the years, I've had a lot of girlfriends, and I love my friends, and it's amazing. But there's times I have to take a step back because, maybe one of my friends is just complaining every time I talk to her, and she's complaining. There's nothing positive going on, no silver lining, and it starts to drain me after a while, and I'll have to take a little bit of space. And, and that doesn't mean I have to say oh, I'm not friends with you anymore, and I totally hate you because you're complaining all the time. It's just saying, hey, I love you without attachment, and what's going on right now is kind of draining my energy, so I need to step back, and I wish you the very best, and we'll kind of merge back up when our energies merge back up. And I think that's something we hold on to things with such attachment in this world. And we're supposed to be here learning how to live out of pleasure, to heal up all of these wounds, and to create a style of unattachment, and trusting that whatever is happening for each individual's highest good is what's supposed to be happening.
I love that. I think that I feel that there's so many areas on the journey where you start to feel that sense of non-attachment, and then you see the attachment pop up in other areas of your life. So you're like, okay, practice non-attachment again, and trying to be really gentle with yourself. Because I see that with myself, where there's a lot of non-attachment with certain relationships, and then other people I'm like, oh my God, why? Like, what's going on? And I have to kind of catch myself and practice non-attachment. And I will say that for myself, just being like super authentic here, there's times where it's really relationships where it's really easy for me to even say, like, hey, I need a little space, like I love you, like we're just, on different paths on different like aspects of our journey right now. And then there's other people where I look at the relationship and I kind of freeze, because I'm a reformed and continually reforming people pleaser. And again, like our conditioning pops up in different places. And I'm like, oh my God, what if someone doesn't like me? Like that's probably my greatest fear, is that people would think that I'm crazy or they don't like me for whatever reason, which they're entitled to. And it's such like a funny thing to think about, because abstractly it's like, okay, well, someone doesn't like you, like that's not that big of a deal. But especially being an empath, and you start to feel, even if someone else is needing space, you start to feel the space shift and feel the relationship shift. And it's just being with very like mindfulness and gentleness, allowing yourself to be super kind to yourself in that process and trust it rather than question it so much. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, because space is so important to integrate. It's like integrating the elements. We have ether, space, fire, wind, water, earth, and it's not fully complete without that space in between to allow for breath. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And speaking about space, I was thinking about that yesterday. Like, I was talking to a client who was saying, I really need to be conscious of my phone time and how much time I'm spending on my phone, because I realize I'm in it too much. And I was like, oh man, we all are, sister. I'm like, this new cell phone thing and laptop and instant communication, even though it's helping us to communicate better directly, it's also helping us kind of push apart from one another in our actual sense of community and physical community. And we don't give ourselves the space to process things. I feel lucky because I was born in 1985 and I graduated high school in 2004, and AOL Instant Messenger came out when I was in 8th grade, and that was like the first little bit of texting. But you had to go home to like your parents' desktop and like sign on, and like you'd have like an hour of like IM time or something. And then texting really started to happen as I was like a senior in high school. We had cell phones, but I lived in a rural area in Vermont, so like there wasn't a lot of signal. And like I appreciate the fact that like I could go home and like do my homework and just be in my room and think and be and process things without this constant instant gratification, this instant need of connection. And if someone wanted to talk to me, like they had to call the house and like ask for me and actually talk to me as opposed to texting. And so I feel like with all of our instant gratification and instant technology, we've kind of lost our sense of intimacy and community in a lot of ways. We've seen like cyberbullying's on the rise because of it, because people have a lot more gumption to say things, via text words or typing as opposed to what they would say to someone in real life, in a real, circumstance where they're actually holding energetic space with someone. And so it's all just very interesting. And as I get older and I realize, life gets shorter the older you get, and like it's like almost like the last time you have a little bit, and then you guys to be really mindful of who you're choosing to allow in your energetic field and who you're choosing not to. And I've had some friends where I've had to be like, I love you so much and I wish you the best, I just don't have time to talk all the time right now, but can we make like a phone date each week and talk on like Fridays at noon, because then I have like actual time where I can be really authentically present with you and with this conversation, as opposed to trying to answer texts in between doing a bunch of different work, or trying to take a quick phone call when I got to run out the door in like 3 minutes to be somewhere else. I really value like designated times to be present, and that's something that I've heard is really nice for relationships, and especially marriages. When people get married, is like designating like date time or time to still be present, because life just takes a hold of you, and if you don't really work at relationships, or you don't designate time to like just be present with someone, then they can easily fall away, even if you're texting each day.
I love that. That's beautiful. Designated time to be present.
It's a challenge in this world these days.
It really is. Yeah. To make yourself sit down sometimes too. Just make yourself sit down and make the time, even with yourself. I think, like you're saying you had growing up, that time to just be with yourself and process and kind of unwind and just feel and be with your feelings and not have so many distractions. Like your mind alone is already such a big distraction to presence, because you're often processing like what's to be done tomorrow or further in the future, or what happened that day or what happened yesterday. And so, yeah, just being able to be present and be in the moment and feel with what your body is telling you as well, because our bodies have so much that they'd like us to understand and to take note of. And so often we're living in our heads that we don't take that time to check in. So, yeah, I love that.
It's so true, and it's hard to. And some of my favorite aha moments were like, sitting on my bed in my towel after I got out of the shower and I'm just staring at the wall, like meditating and not even realizing it. Or like in high school, I'd pull back in to my driveway and just listen to music, and I'd sit there sometimes and just like be and like meditate out. And it was awesome because I didn't have this device that was taking and grabbing my attention and putting on, pressures of like, oh, I've got 3 text messages, I got to get back to them. Or, and we see that a lot, like you were talking about, like with moms, oh, what can I do to be better? I got to think about dinner tonight and everything tomorrow and whatnot. And it's really hard to pull back and get present with yourself and just allow things to happen organically. Our society isn't designed for that currently, but I'm really hoping that as all of us continue to grow and awaken, that we can slowly change that and switch to more presence and more pleasure, as opposed to more struggle, and if that's what you learned growing up and that's what you saw with your parents, like I'm the child of alcoholics, and there's stresses with that. And as much as I love my parents and I honor them for doing the best that they could, there was definitely some things that I learned that weren't the healthiest, that I absolutely repeated in relationships and have grown since. And now I'm at a space where if I'm in a relationship, it's like, okay, is this serving me? Is this bringing me joy? Is this making me feel good? Is there a problem that, I'm trying to look past, that I need to pay attention to? And I'm really trying to be consciously a lot more present. Sometimes I'll even have friends be like, oh, well, are you being too critical? Or like, maybe you should let things play out and see what happens. And then I have some older women I speak with sometimes from a different generation where they're like, oh, well, that's just how it is, and you got to make it work. And well, what can you do to make it better, as opposed to, oh, that's not in alignment with you. Well, that's okay. Like the women who came before us were very much taught to fix everything, and we were too. And we're switching that and allowing things simply to be now instead of trying to influence situations. And that's a huge shift. A huge shift collectively and generationally.
I love that you brought that up, because I was just thinking this last week about how there has been so much collective shift in mindset and in gender roles and in how we show up as women, particularly, just in the last, 50 years. And yeah, I mean, even in the last 10 years, there's been so much that's shifted and gone on. And sometimes I feel like I'm a little, ignorant when it comes to understanding the width and depth of American history in particular. And I saw, what was it? It was like a PBS special, because I'm a nerd, about the Stonewall riots, which I actually knew nothing about, but I wanted to educate myself. So PBS is what better place? And that was, what was it, 1969 or something? And it was all about the liberation of the LGBT community in that time, and just to see the different restrictions that were put on people for just showing up as who they are not long ago is so insane to me. And that just shows me, I grew up very sheltered. I like to say I grew up as if I was Amish, but I wasn't. I grew up in a Christian home, and I was very sheltered. I was homeschooled, and I've done my best to learn what I could the last 10 years of my life, being an adult and learning how to live in the 21st century and live in this society. But I think it's important that we, when we start to take notice, we know better, we do better, we can understand people a little bit better and take the time to understand, what is the community, what is the culture of certain aspects of our communities, and how can we show up better and hold more space for people that have suffered collectively, and for people that have, learned these patterns over longer periods of time. So yeah, it's just understanding, taking the time to understand people. We've talked about before how it's hard to hate people close up, and before you judge, the people that are more introverted, for example. People that are introverted tend to be more standoffish in the beginning. And I can't even talk today, which shows me that progesterone is killing my words. But yeah, taking the time to ask questions, get to know people before you make those snap judgments, because you never know what people are fully going through or what brought them to that now moment where they're standing in front of you. And they might have social anxiety. They might have, things they learned growing up that prevents them from, those initial positive encounters with people. So just being able to take the time and hold massive space for other people to show up and meet you where you're at, and you meet them where they're at. I think that's so important for our communities, really, to heal in a deeper way.
I agree. And just showing up and just saying, this is me right now. This is you right now. This is where the practice of holding space and unattachment comes from. And it's saying, all right, you've been through a lot of trauma and you get triggered all the time by all kinds of things. And that's okay. And you're going to heal that in your own process. I went through that a while ago. I was able to heal and come out of it. And I hope you can too, without putting any pressure or any, or any labels or any judgments on them, and just saying, hey, you're simply a human. Same thing if you're coming across someone who's just really angry or really upset all the time, or has a lot pent up, or has an addiction, and it's just saying, hey, like, I support you unconditionally as a human being, and I really hope the best for you, and I hope you can work on this. I know there's help out there for you if you so choose, or if you're completely happy living like this and living angry every day, then all the power to you. I hope, I personally hope you come around from that and, you get freed from that, but who am I to judge? I shared a meme on Facebook yesterday that was in my memories that I saw coming. I've seen it several times though, and it says something like, every time I judge someone, I find an unhealed part of myself, something similar to that. And it made so much sense, because if there is something that you're judging someone on, then that's an opportunity for you to check yourself and say, okay, why am I creating judgment? Of course, there are certain things that we come here on this planet to change. Like, it should make us a little angry when we see sea turtles, choking on balloons in the ocean. Like, things like that, absolutely. There is this degree of needing to make change. But then there's also this degree of needing to create peace and unconditional understanding at the same time. And it's a delicate tightrope, but I think that we're all on a really nice path to start creating that.
That's beautiful.
And then when you mentioned the Stonewall riots, I'm not sure what that is either, but I'm going to have to look that up. But I remember being obsessed with the year 1968 when I was younger. I think I did a lot of work in a past life around that time, or parallel life. And so I have this book called 1968. So I always love to just flip to random pages on books, as we know, when I'm doing podcasts. So I flipped to chapter 11, and it says April motherfuckers. And then it has quote that says, never explain what you are doing. This wastes a great deal of time and rarely gets through. Show them through your action. If they don't understand it, fuck them. Maybe they'll hook up with you on the next action. Abby Hoffman of Revolution for the Hell of It, 1968.
Yes. I love it so much.
Yeah, I loved that. And that's just saying, that's the only way we create change, is simply by learning, by embodying, and by leading by example. Children learn by example. Very rarely do they learn through our words. Words are beautiful and they're amazing, and they absolutely, help people to communicate and to pattern things up. But it's really all about your energy, the energy you're holding, and the actions that you're taking.
That's amazing. Yeah, so a little bit about the Stonewall riots, because I'm sometimes terrible at recounting stories, but just like a little intro for our listeners as well, if you don't know anything about it. So homosexuality in the year 1969, I believe, was illegal. And it was interesting because they showed a lot of footage and like interviews from CBS, because, they had like 3 channels at the time. And like a psychologist who went and did lectures at universities on how like homosexuality was like a disease of the mind, and nobody was born this way. And there was a lot of propaganda put out at the time that it was a way for like men, like old men, to take advantage of young boys, and this is how it like all started. And so it was a lot of like installation of fear because they didn't understand what was actually going on. And the Stonewall riots were, there's this bar in New York, I believe, and it was all about the establishment of Gay Pride Day. And so all of the Pride festivals we see around, the world now were established because of this. And it was like this bar that was like a safe haven, so to speak, and like fueled by the mob, and like it was owned by the mob or something. And it was like the one place that people could go to that was free of retribution, so to speak. And there was some night, I forget what happened, but like 5 police officers raided the bar and like shut out the lights and was trying to get everyone out. and it was just kind of an uprising where the people all of a sudden saw how like few they were and how numerous the people were, and so everyone kind of banded together and did like a march against the police officers, and it just sort of became this like big upheaval that turned into a like LGBT liberation, so to speak. So I thought it was really empowering that I read something the other day about how so many people are like, oh, the government should always be right, or like lead the way or whatever. But the greatest I'm butchering this, but it was like the greatest shifts in American history have been when the people have risen up and said, actually, this is not like the way things should go.
Every time,
like we should learn from history, but it just makes me think of all the stuff with abortion right now too, like all the people and women in particular rising up to say, hey, like these are our bodies, we should be able to choose. And I just think it's beautiful to see, and I hope that everyone learns from history at some point. But I digress.
I agree. And actually, I know exactly what you're talking about with the Stonewall riots. I didn't know that was what it was called, but I remember learning about it and hearing about it, and it's something that's still very prevalent today, and that's the thing. We're going back and we're sewing up these gaping wounds that we've just left kind of bleeding and festering and ignoring for a long time, with LGBTQ rights, with abortion, with women's rights, with all kinds of things, all the sexual harassment that's coming out. And really, we didn't even get a sexual harassment law until the 1980s. Did you ever watch that movie with Charlize Theron, North Country?
No, it sounds amazing though. I love her.
Yeah. It's very intense, but it's really good. And it's about, this group of women. I think they were actually in Canada. I don't think they were in the U.S., but they went on to like a job site because that was like the really good jobs in their town at the time. And like, they went to go and like work up at this, it's a mine of some sort. I don't know what they were mining or moving, some gravel or something. And they were not happy to have women working there. It was like in the 1980s, and they were brutal to them and did really horrible things, knocked over women while they were in the porta potty so that shit would go all over them, lots of rape and sexual harassment and all kinds of things. And it was terrible. But Charlize Theron played that role and was like incredible, and like had to go to court and everything for it. And it helped create, some of our first rights against sexual harassment. And that wasn't until the 1980s, which is like no time in the grand scheme of things.
That's that reminds me of the 1980s was also when they were still doing like involuntary sterilization of African American women, and I think Native American women as well, in hospitals after women gave birth. I'm like, that's insane that it was just the other day that was happening. Ugh.
Yeah, I think that's still happening a little bit. There's a lot of hush-hush going on about that in our country with some of the women in the North, and some of the indigenous women in North America and Canada. I've been seeing some things going around on like Sacred Stone Earth and some other Native American publications I follow, saying that they're still trying to, sterilize the population so they don't reproduce.
Gross.
So that's
I
sad.
hate that.
Yeah, it feels shitty.
Yeah, fuck that.
I know. Well, speaking of which, I know we have to wrap up here in just a few.
Yeah.
How would you like to end our show? You want to do a little light language? You don't have to.
Well, let's do it. Let's drop in and see what happens. I never fully know, but we'll see.
And right before we do that, I just want to say thank you all for listening. This is Heart Over Ego Radio. You're here with Heidi Summers and me, Mandee Elam. This is our show, Womb Magic, where we just hold space for women once a week to talk about things related to women and the womb and evolution and revolution and all the good things. And you can find us on Facebook.com/Womb Magic Movement, or you can find Heidi at Heidi Summers, and she's an incredible healer and offers all kinds of amazing things. So I encourage you to hook up with her. And you can find me on Facebook, Mandee, Mandee, Elam, Elam, on Facebook as well. And I have other avenues if you're interested in working together. Thanks for holding space today, Heidi.
Thank you, Mandee. So I invite you to take a few deep breaths wherever you're at. Uncross your legs wherever you are, whether you're lying down, sitting up, standing, what have you. Allowing yourself to just be present in this now moment. Closing your eyes, taking inventory of what's happening around you. And with the breath, dropping inward and taking inventory of what's happening within you. Is your breath rapid? Is it slow? Is it high in your chest, maybe even in your throat? Is it down in your belly? Can you send it to your toes? Just noticing, practicing non-judgment, non-attachment. What if today you allowed yourself to be fully present in your body? You allowed yourself to feel everything they want to feel. What if you allow yourself to let your body take you on a journey today? Wherever you have to go, go. But let your body, let your spirit move you there. What if you allow yourself to see everything with fresh eyes, with a fresh perspective? What if you allow all your old ideologies, everything to drop away? Let everything simply be new. And notice what arises in that space. Notice what beauty, notice what depth, notice any pain, any discomfort, and just allow it to be present. Let your heart move your body on this journey, ever deepening in the truth of who you are, ever discovering more of who you are, and ever softening towards yourself and others with one simple breath in and out. Knowing all is perfect as it is. Believing what you want to believe. And knowing that anything is possible when you allow yourself to simply see something new. Hasetaya vashomoto oe asi. Hisoto oe sanaikata amasa. Hoshikati isi tu asaya mataya taaya. Amata aya suesaya tama kiu shukoto oe si e mataya sinato otoe. Haravi aya soe homo e aya kiu daya. Oraya, oraya, si I am, toetaya, di I am masio. Oya, oya, I am Maria, do si I kuraya, oh I am. Oh, I am a sua, Maya. Oh, see, Maya. It's been a pleasure journeying with y'all today. Allow your heart to be open, your eyes to be soft, and your energy to be flowing. Have a beautiful day. Thank you, Mandee.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, listeners. And so it is.
And so it is.